Hello everybody, welcome to the Daily Sip. My name is Oliver and my mission is to bring you closer to organic Japanese green tea. But today we're gonna not dive into green tea or the preparation or the drinking of green tea. Today we're gonna have a session about the Japanese teapot or the so-called Kyusu. When we talk about preparing tea, one of the big topics is space. And we can have different tools for space for green tea. And this brings me then to point number one. When we are talking about the different tools, what can we think about? One definitely is the most common tool, which is the tea bag. Second one we can talk about is the strainer. And the third one is, and that I want to present you today, is the Kyusu Teapot. When we are going into the first one, so the tea bag. This is definitely the tool which gives you the leaves or gives the tea the least space, and especially when you're going into loose leaf tea, then space is super important as you have the unfolding of the tea leaves. But why is it actually possible that good quality tea is in this tea unfolding and giving a nice flavor? Well, let's have a look. When we look at the inside of a tea bag, actually, what we see is that the tea inside a tea bag is very close to sand. So when we are looking at the material which we are actually drinking with the tea bag, we can see that this material is just chopped down to very small particles. And the problem of this is that the tea leaves themselves, they lose a lot of essential oils, they lose a lot of flavors, and it becomes less nutrient rich using these tea leaves. And especially when you are looking at the packaging of the most green tea producers, which produce these commonly used tea bags which you can buy in the supermarket, there are additives in it, or there are added flavors, there are natural added flavors, which is nothing more than just naturally produced out of sources, but it is still made in a laboratory, and it is green tea taste, which is super standardized. And that's why often these tea bag teas, they are smelling or they're tasting quite similar, even when they're coming from different brands. There are actually tea bags which are bigger, tea bags which are used for loose leaf tea, and they're often in size quite big. This reason is actually to give the tea leaves the space they need, to give the loose leaf tea the space to unfold, and then often better quality tea leaves are used in these tea bags. Second is the strainer. When we look at the strainer, we can say, wow, okay, here we actually have quite some space, a decent amount of space where the tea leaves can unfold. The problem is not when you put the tea in, the problem is when you brew the tea, especially when you go also into the second brewing. Because what actually happens in the brewing is that the tea leaves unfold, as I mentioned before, and they're needing space, and the tea strainer actually does provide some space, but not enough. When you do brew your tea with a strainer, you often see that the tea sits at the bottom, and people who are used to brew with a teapot, they know that the tea leaves, they can expand much more, and that's why when you do the experiment of comparing a strainer brewed tea versus a teapot brewed tea where the tea leaves really have enough space, then actually you see or you know the difference in the complexity of the tea brewing. The taste is just very different. It is a little bit dimmed down, it's less complex, and it's a little bit more shy, the taste, when it's coming from a strainer. That's why a teapot, in my opinion, if you want to have the full complexity of the tea leaves, then the teapot is definitely a good option. So what we can see, and when we have a look at the inside of the teapot, what is already nice is that there's a lot of space where the tea leaves can unfold. So I can even put nearly my hand in, not exactly, but there's a lot of space, and here you can actually see that there's absolutely no issue for the tea leaves to expand. When we go into the second part, so the second point of these 5 reasons why to use Kyusu Teapot is the different filters which are used. When we are looking at the filter type, so there are different metal built-in filters. So here you can see one which is not 360, it's just at the front a bit, then it stops, and at the back side there's no filter, so you can see here the clay is showing up on both sides. Meanwhile, you can also have these 360 degree built-in filters which we have here, so we can really see that here the tea leaves are going, or the tea filter goes around the whole teapot, so very, very beautiful to see. And actually this teapot is especially useful when the particles are smaller. But before I told you the particles, when they are smaller or chopped very small particles, this is not a good tea. Actually, there exists a Japanese green tea, and this is what I prepared here for you. This is the Fukamushi tea. So this is just a longer steamed tea. So the smaller particles here are not a sign actually of bad quality. It's just a sign that this tea has been longer in the steam bath, that the cell membranes have been broken down a little bit further than in the normal production, and then you can actually have these particles. But nevertheless, you still have some nice beautiful leaves with this tea. And so it's kind of a mix. It nearly goes a little bit in the direction of a mix of matcha and sencha, which also is known and is called the sencha iri. But here we really talk about the Fukamushi deep steam tea. And for this tea, it is very well advised that you have a strainer which goes around. The reason is that if you have a clay filter which is only at the top, or at kind of the exit of the spout, then actually the tea leaves, they can clog the filter, and the water doesn't go out, and you risk to overbrew your tea. And that's why this tea is a little bit, or this teapot is a little bit more versatile with this built-in metal filter going 360 around, because then the water can also come from the side to the spout and then enter into your tea cup or into your tea glass. But when it comes to higher, very, very high grade teas, so often I personally use very high grade teas with this Kyusu. So when we talk about gyokuro, for example, or long shaded, long needles sencha, which also exists. So here actually we see that there you have a built-in clay filter which has just small holes in it at the exit, at the spout, and this is a teapot which I use really mostly to brew gyokuro, because here I can really have only clay surrounding the tea, because it is said that sometimes smaller particles, they can actually clog in the metal filter. You don't bring out all the tea, and that's why it can change a little bit the flavor, and especially when you're using a very high grade tea, you absolutely want the taste of that tea and no of any other tea. I personally never made the experience that my tea taste was completely changed with the metal filter. I use it very, very often. But some people told me that they have made this experience by using a metal filter. But if you wash it good, if you clean it after the usage, and you look that there are no kind of parts of tea leaves anymore in the teapot, then actually there is no issue of using a metal filter also for gyokuro or higher grade senchas. When we go into the third point of why a Kyusu teapot could be a good thing to use, is actually that you can change the flavor. When you're starting out with a tea or in your journey of loose leaf tea, then we suggest you to use a glazed teapot. And the glazed teapots are actually easy to spot. These are the ones shining in the light, so you can see the light reflecting on the teapot. These teapots are very neutral to the taste of the tea, meaning that the tea you put in, the tea you will have in your cup. When we go a little bit further in your journey of green tea or in journey of loose leaf tea, then an unglazed teapot can actually be quite a good option. I personally like the black teapots, which are unglazed a lot. The reason is that the black clay teapot quite gives kind of some minerals to the teapot, to the tea itself, which then changes the profile a little bit into a smoother. It can dim down a little bit the astringent tones and make the tea very smooth, round, and in my opinion, very pleasant in terms of its taste profile. When we go into the section of red teapots, then the red unglazed teapots, what they do is that they push a little bit the tea taste into an even more savory taste profile out of my experience, making it very strong on that aspect. If you like this umami, savory, a little bit kind of salty, sweet taste profile of the Japanese green tea and you want to push this a bit, then definitely a red unglazed teapot can be the perfect option for you. So depending on where you stand in your tea journey, my suggestion is in the beginning, try to take a glazed teapot and then maybe move yourself slowly in your journey over to an unglazed teapot and try it out. Often these unglazed teapots, they're quite pricey, quite expensive. So maybe just have a look at the beginning at a glazed one and then you can walk yourself through the world of teapot, which is also very, very big and very versatile. When we go into the fourth point of Kyusu Teapot, then one thing which is nice about it, that it is quite easy to pour. And especially when you have guests, then the teapot is, in my opinion, the only solution you really have if you want to share a glass of tea or a cup of tea with them. What you then have to apply is, especially when it comes to Japanese green tea, is the alternate pouring method. The alternate pouring method is actually just a simple method of pouring a little bit from cup to cup and do this back and forth. The reason you should do this is that actually at the bottom of the teapot is when you brew the tea, the strongest parts or the strongest drops of the tea pouring you will give to you and your friends. So by alternating the pouring, you're actually alternating, or you kind of spreading out the strength of the tea taste over the different cups and create a similar taste experience for everyone who is involved in the tea session. And that's why the alternate pouring method is very, very important, and the pouring is super easy. And also when you brew the tea, you just hold the tap here and then you just pour like this. What is nice about Japanese green tea teapots is that you actually can also leave. So they're nicely built. You can nearly leave it, but then at a certain angle it drops. So you can also just pour it in like this and wait a little bit longer, but I suggest you just use 2 fingers and turn it like that, and then you have a beautiful pouring of your tea. And when we go into the last point, there actually I have 2 under points, and this is the side handle. When we have a look at the Japanese teapot, or maybe let me show it with this one here, is that you see that there are always the side handles. We in Europe or in the West, we are often used to behind or at the top of it. When we are looking at the Japanese teapot, you often see that they have a side handle, and the side handle is also hollow. And thanks to this hollow part of the side handle, actually the side handle doesn't get hot. And so when you pour quite a hot tea, when you go up to 80 degrees Celsius or 176 Fahrenheit, then you're actually heating up the water quite high, and you would burn, or kind of the teapot would be too hot to hold while doing your pouring. And that's why the side handle is a great tool, and it never gets hot, so there's no issue with that point. Another point, and this is for me quite a nice and quite a decent point, is actually when you are pouring the tea, when you have a handle which is at the back or at the top, what's happening to your elbow is actually that you're moving your elbow up, so you have quite the big movement, and this aesthetic, from an aesthetic standpoint, this is not very beautiful. And with the side handle, which I have here, I can just pour like this without moving my elbow. You can just bring it out of your wrist, and this is very, very beautiful. And just from an aesthetic standpoint, Japanese people, especially when it comes to tea, this is a very important point. So actually this is movement, which is then much more decent and much more beautiful. Good. So, and these are the 5 points why you should use a teapot. I hope you like this session too. And never forget, if you leave us a comment, ask us a question, we're happy to answer them. And I guess I see you soon. Thank you for watching. See you and bye-bye.